Well, thanks for joining us in today's conversation because I got two amazing leaders with me to sort of join in a conversation. So I'm Scott Armstrong. I'm a partner at Brainrider, and I've got special guests, Adrienne and Jessie from Lyft and Meta. And I'm really excited to be in a conversation with these two powerhouse women, mostly because I'm a big fan of each of them, but also because they've got great insights and experience, and they've offered to share it with all of us as they're navigating how to efficiently resource creative execution, creative strategy, marketing execution, marketing strategy with bigger goals going into 2024, but leaner in-house teams. And really, efficiency is the name of the game this year for all of us. And so they've been trying to figure that out. So let's get started. We'll just go with the really easy question. Jessie, who are you? What's your story?
Yeah. So who am I? I'm Jessie Van Arman. And thank you for having us here today. And by way of like a reverse introduction, Scott is perhaps the strongest with positive affirmations. So thank you for all of that. I lead a small marketing team at Meta that manages verticals, including education, government, elections, and nonprofit. I'm fairly new in that role, but been at Meta 6 years. And yeah, that's me. I'll pass it to Adrienne.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Polk, and I lead creative operations at Lyft. So I'm responsible for all things related to creative resourcing, including people management, agency management, tooling, processes, et cetera. I've been there about 4 years, and prior to my current role, I was a marketing program manager. So I led end-to-end delivery of marketing campaigns.
Well, what's amazing, welcome to both of you. And what's amazing about having both of you is you're actually on sort of different sides of that resourcing tree. So one of you is on the marketing side, developing programs, and then the other is really on the creative operations side, so helping to resource those programs. And I love that different perspective. But let's start with another easy question. Adrienne, what are you looking forward to this fall and into 2024?
Sure. Work-wise or personally?
Whatever you want to say.
Both.
Sure.
I am really looking forward. So Lyft recently got a new CEO. So it's been exciting to see the changes that he has brought to the company and sort of enacting on his vision. And we're hiring a new CMO shortly. So I think the marketing org is really excited to see what that brings, and something we're all looking forward to. Personally, I'm looking forward to Halloween with my 2-year-old. So we're still in the age where I can dress him up in any costume I want. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
And Halloween in Brooklyn's got to be an amazing thing to do.
It's out of control.
Jessie, what are you looking forward to?
So work-wise, like I said, I'm in a new role, and I am admittedly in a major onboarding period. It's been since May, but it is ongoing. And I have a lot to learn. And so what I'm looking forward to is getting to a point, I will never be done learning, but where I feel like I have a grasp enough on the challenges and the talents within the organization that I can actually, build some strategy to support the team and support our partners and feel like I've kind of got the bases covered. Personally, I don't have a super robust personal life. I am in school and have a child. And so I am looking forward to being done soon with school.
That totally makes sense. Amazing. Let's move into resourcing. Let's move into marketing. So what are the main challenges and pain points that you're feeling in this year of transition? Sounds like your org's getting re-energized, new CEO, new CMO. So what are the current challenges and pain points you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you already touched on it a little bit, but we have pretty a different landscape in terms of resources, meaning we're more resource constrained than we ever have been before. And there's also pressure from the business to execute on these big, lofty goals. And I think the biggest pain points are really, how do we make the work happen in this resource constrained environment? And I think it's maybe specific to tech companies especially, but there is just a constant pivoting. There's priorities for the company, but those priorities shift, and a product that may have been meaning to launch in September is now pushed to January. And so how is the marketing org reacting in real time to those changes and ensuring that the team is staffed adequately to react as quickly as we need to? And we're not, burning burning resources on projects that are, ending up not going to launch or whatever the case may be. So I would say needing to pivot and being as nimble as possible.
We've been partners for a number of years. That feels very similar to where it was 12 months or 24 months ago, but potentially more resource constrained now. So you got to be more efficient. You can't solve it just by throwing money at it. You got to be smarter.
Correct.
What's your approach to solving that? Like, how are you managing that show?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that changes that also pivots. I would say I learn new things constantly, and I'm learning from how we operated in the past to inform how we make decisions in the future. But I would say a primary tool we use is having a diverse set of resources. And so, for example, we have an in-house team. We also have contractors on our team and freelancers, so we can tap those people if there's an urgent project that comes through with a specific skill set and we need to get it done in a short period of time. That's a perfect instance to bring a freelancer in. And then we also have agency partners who some are more integrated than others. And for example, work with your team and Ryan, who's a producer who, is really seamlessly integrated in our team, which makes it an amazing option for us when we have a specific set of work for a period of time that we know would be perfect for an agency partner to take on. So really having a diverse mix of options is huge. And I would say relationship building with all of those options, which is sort of a cliche thing to say, but having a rapport with those individuals or teams or companies and being transparent about where we're at so that we can make the best decisions together. And I find oftentimes, a solution that I might not have even thought of comes to me from someone else because we have that trust and that relationship and how we want to approach getting the work done.
Amazing. So a diverse set of great relationships and partners is really your primary strategy from a creative operations perspective.
Yep.
Jessie, and you can think about your current role or your past roles. When you think about getting it all done or getting more done, what are your big challenges, number one? And then what are some of the approaches you've used either currently or in the past that have helped ease the pain?
Yeah, I think conditions, in our organization have changed such that old tools are not available to us anymore as readily, at least currently. So for instance, I think like Adrienne, what you spoke to regarding being able to tap people in on a cyclical or seasonal basis as there's ebbs and flows, in work that used to be available to us, but that takes, a fair amount of OpEx to be able to support that model. And, you didn't ask me what the number one challenge was, but I think it's critical to address is I think right now, the number one challenge I see is that we have lesser resources, but the work at least has not stopped. And the demands from partner organizations, even those who are also more resource constrained, have not subsided. And so I think the tool I'm trying to think through now is more also to kind of build, in regards to your comment on relationships, is just resetting the dynamics with stakeholders and partners within the business about what our team can do, what we can't do, identifying the strengths of people within our organization and what our organization should be known for. And I'm going through that and thinking through that as I onboard. And then, as a tool, being able to deliver that back out in a way that's kind of adopted and received and respected is the first step. And my hope is that as conditions change in the business, we will have access again to flexible staffing models. But right now, I think it's about ruthless prioritization, which is a favorite meta term, but it really applies here in regards to what we're going to take on.
Yep, that totally makes sense. I mean, so you're both hitting the circumstance of do more with less. It's kind of a classic marketing challenge. We're all coming out of almost 15 years of boom. So the reset, although painful and disruptive, pretty natural in the economic course to get people to sort of reestablish priorities and recenter. But it's led to a classic, even for growing tech companies, a classic marketing challenge, which is do more with less, not enough resources. And so some of the tools and approaches I've heard are great communications, great partnerships, clarity on the partnership, setting expectations, understanding where core competencies sit, who's good at what and when, and then communicating that back out. And then the best tool of ever, which is ruthless prioritization, really staying focused on those objectives that matter most and using that to triage and leverage out. Talk to me about your triage process. So ruthless prioritization involves something that we hate as marketers, which is saying no. Or if you're really smart, saying not quite yet or not now, because these other priorities are overcoming it. When you're doing that kind of triage of projects, how do you work? You've got lots coming at you. You can't do it all at once. How do you make triage decisions?
Sure. I think this kind of ties back to what I was saying about the relationship building. It's at the core, having an understanding as a team that, my job is to unblock creatives from doing their best work and create a pathway for people to get amazing work done. And so I want to make sure that that mentality is clear to my marketing partners. So when they're coming to me or the team with requests, they know that I'm doing everything I can to get that work done. Beyond that, as a foundation, I would say that, aligning our priorities with the business priorities. So we have our top projects for the quarter or the half that must get done no matter what, and carving out, the right team, our best players to work on that and ensure that they are not disrupted from being on that project is the first sort of way I look at things. And then secondly, I think giving people really tangible requests. So for example, this past week, even I said, on X date, we're going to experience a creative gridlock, which means we can't kick off any new work because our resources are tapped. We can either de-scope some projects, we can cancel some projects or combine them. If we have 3 similar projects, let's get them into one and de-scope it. We can invest more if we want to make that ask, or we can push kickoff dates. And so, knowing that Lyft is going to be really busy in October, Halloween is a huge milestone for us. Can we push this other project that isn't relevant to December or whatever the case is? And then saying we need to do that for X number of projects. It's a really specific ask, and it's something that people can react to, as opposed to saying, we're really busy, there's going to be gridlock, I don't know what to do, we need more money, we need more people. It sort of creates a frenzy, which we don't want. And then also, it's hard to react to that. Someone may say, okay, I can cancel this one thing, when what I really need is they have to move 10 things. So being as specific and pointed and data driven as possible is a really helpful tool to get people to understand the state that we're in and make strong recommendations on how to solve for it. So that's, I think, on a macro level. On a micro level, it's really day to day. I'm sure all of us are aware of, the fires that we're putting out constantly, and someone gets sick or a person ends up, moving to a different team or a project gets deprioritized. So it's also just being empathetic to the needs of the marketers and the creative team, and understanding that things are ever changing and we have to be nimble. And no 2 weeks are alike. So being in a sort of collaborative team environment, again, to figure out the problems right in front of us while also keeping the bigger picture in mind.
I think empathy is such an amazing leadership skill. And so I'm really glad that you brought it up. You also talked about transparency and clarity. On the triage side, I think you did something that Meta actually does very well, which is you rooted the prioritization to core business objectives. And you said, and I want to put our strongest teams on the most important business objectives with room to focus and deliver great work. It's funny, creative operations, I'm sure, often feels like the bad player in the circumstance because you're saying no so often and you're reprioritizing. But if you think about that as a skill set, empathy driven by business priorities, focused on getting people work that they can excel at, leaning into strong partnerships and realizing you can't get it all done, but turning that into tangible decision options as opposed to a frenzy. How brilliant is that as a framework and approach? From a marketing perspective, How does it feel when you've got marketing objectives to hit, but you don't necessarily have the resourcing that's available there? How do you communicate your priority or need while being respectful to the rest of the organization and other players?
Yeah. So again, it's the work I'm trying to do now in terms of rethinking, what our team does in service of other partners and objectives, and then very, crisp guidelines around what we don't. I was really pleased yesterday to be in a meeting with the larger organization in which my team sits, and to be hearing about, from leadership down, setting guidelines and criteria for, as an organization, what we will do and what will be the criteria we look at when accepting work. What do we want to be known for? And I think it's really also critical to have leadership support in that, and to have it be tops down. The day-to-day stakeholders that we work with are not necessarily executives, although they're certainly all super adept and leaders in their own right. But everybody personally is going to have a set of, metrics they want to hit that might not ladder even up to their executives.
Mhm.
And so coming back again to kind of communications as being a critical tool, knowing with whom you need to be communicating, knowing when to tap like our own leadership to be having kind of top to top discussions to ensure that everyone's aligned. The other thing that's perhaps, a more like psychological tool in the ability to say no and draw lines is, you spoke before about it being hard for marketers to say no. I'm not sure about at Lyft, but in our organization, I think we also have, and I say this with a lot of love because I am one, we have many type A overachievers, and it's really hard to decline work, especially if it might get picked up elsewhere and not done to the standards that you would want.
Ah.
And so to be able to, at a certain point, say, that's okay. Like, we don't have time to fix all the problems, and to kind of like police other teams and to police everything because we're just too huge. And I say it with like tension because it's really hard for me to
Mhm.
see things like shipping that aren't, to what I feel are our company's standards of excellence.
I think you raise an amazing point. First, you're both superstars. You work in organizations that are truly transformative, trying to change the world with big, giant, lofty missions. They're exceptionally well-run organizations with great communication and prioritization and objective setting. And you're working with teams of superstars. So it's sort of like we're in New York City right now. It's like managing the Yankees, right? Which is really hard work. I don't do sports metaphors very much, but that metaphor is about how hard it is to manage a team of superstars who are all type A in their various ways. They might be creative type A, or they might be management type A, or they might be marketing type A, but they all know how to get things done.
Mhm.
And when you look at that triangle of quality, time, and budget, which is really what we're playing with right now, and you're given the task of ruthless prioritization, what ruthless prioritization really means is that you have to let go a little bit.
Right.
You raise such an incredible point, and how hard it is for all of us to let go and not ship everything perfectly or to our standards, but know that good enough sometimes will be good enough to reach those objectives. And it's really the management decisions we're being tasked with. As you struggle with that as an overachiever, what would be some advice that you would give your peers in other organizations? Because as tough as it feels for us in our current circumstances, it's going to be even tougher in other organizations that have been under-resourced for years or may not have leadership that is as clear about their objectives or priorities or what's important. And so they're much more in a gray zone. How do you deal with less than perfect and still motivated team and stay focused on winning? Adrienne, you look horrified by that question.
I know I relate deeply, and I am also a perfectionist and want to see the best work get out the door every time. So it's not cut and dry. You don't achieve that status and then move on. You are constantly battling it, I feel. I think one of the tools I use is outlining options and impact. So Here's a list of the options we can go with and the impact of each, and presenting that to leadership, or at least my peers, and saying, hey, are you on this product marketing team, on the creative team, on the marketing program management team? Are we all aligned that these are the options and these are the impacts? And presenting that to leadership is a really useful tool to get them engaged and frankly, like hold their feet to the fire and say, these are the decisions we are faced with making. Here's what we recommend. Are you aligned with that? And it sort of gets everyone on the same page around what balls are going to have to drop, because it is impossible to get it all done at the highest standard you have. And I think as it relates to managing the team, I think for me, what I use is transparency. Like, some of the projects are really going to inspire and excite. And these, like you said, the creative team is so talented and hungry and excited. And some of the projects they work on are going to fuel that fire. And some things are going to be less exciting to work on. And that's just part of being, part of work. And so I think sharing with them the reasons why decisions are made is also important. So it's surfacing it to leadership, but also being transparent with the team so that they're clear on what they're working on and why it's important and why the decisions were made behind it. I think that that's really helpful in getting everyone on the same page around what the priorities are.
So that's a lovely consultants. We're talking strategy right now. This is really resourcing strategy that we've moved in. And that's a lovely consultants 2x2 tool, right? Which is impact and resourcing, or impact and effort. And then what sits where, so that you can choose, high impact, low resourcing, a no-brainer. High impact, high resourcing, potentially important. Low impact, high resourcing, doesn't get done. Low impact, high impact, I got my grids quite a little bit wrong, but that's really the decision quadrants you're using. That's a great tool. And then I think the innovation that you bring to that is that you're actually bringing that tool to leadership and making them collaborate in the decision-making, and bringing it back to your creative team and your resources and making them party of that decision-making. It makes sense as well. Yep. Jessie, are there any ways that you're tracking or reporting on the effectiveness of your projects that's helping you think through resourcing impact, either in the present, past, present, or future?
Yeah. So measurement is super, super critical within the firm, more so than ever. I, for the last several years in multiple roles, have worked in some more like squishy areas of the business where the impact is not always as easy to track. Sometimes it's about reputation or sentiment or, risk mitigation. And those things don't necessarily have really clear metrics to drive. But what we're doing is trying to institute a really fastidious approach to measurement, identifying where we can, what we can report on, and making sure that there's really great reporting and visibility to those metrics to both prove the value of what teams are doing and kind of fight for more resourcing when possible to support those initiatives, even if they're not as clearly metrics driven, successes. And also with our partners, as we do try to prioritize and go through this exercise, being really clear that if something is not measurable and they won't help us in partnership to measure, because oftentimes we can't do that alone, then we will, those will be the first things to get cut. So help us measure. If it's not working, we cut. If you will not be our partners in measuring by doing kind of whatever they need to on their end, we cut.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that fits the age of efficiency.
Yeah. I
think the word squishy is kind of a squishy definition. So let's explore that just a little bit. Yeah. Revenue is clearly hard hitting. Other reported on performance metrics, whether it's rides or users or engagement, those are usually fairly hard hitting. What are some of the squishy projects that you've had to sort out metrics for? And do you have any examples of solves?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier before we started recording here about how like brand marketing in a lot of organizations now is seen as squishy. And I mean, I think I provided a personal anecdote of why Lyft's brand works for me. And I'm a marketer, but like I still, of course, respond to great brand marketing. And for us, I think, I used to work with small business where reputation and sentiment was a big part of it. And I think we needed to just do, I don't know the full answer for this. I feel like we needed to do a better job of internal storytelling, to put internal comms at like the forefront of what we were doing, to make sure we were carving out the time to share stories, on our internal messaging boards, and reporting to leadership, and sometimes giving anecdotal stories that would make really clear, the emotional connections that we were having with our customers and constituents. Because no, there's not always numbers to be able to relay the impact of our work. I don't know that that's like a super crisp and clear answer to the question. It's something that we feel out as we go to see what resonates with leadership and what will help move the needle. And sometimes that's different with different leaders too.
I think your answer is awesome because really, I heard a
Great.
couple of things there. I heard first that storytelling is important for all of us so people
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Second, it's really hard in those squishy categories to find the metrics. And thirdly, and this is what both Meta and Lyft do really well, is that you try stuff. You try to be fearless and say, okay, let's see what we can learn if we measure the following things. So you both very strongly set from the outset that measurement is now very important in telling the story. We're not sure what measurements tell the story very well, so we're going to feel it out with the way that you said it, right? We're going to find some performance measurements that we can tie back to those overarching business objectives and incrementally learn. If there's something that I could share from the experience of working with both of your organizations and teams, is incremental learning is the way that all of us get better. And so if you're sitting out there and you are a smaller, less resourced, less famous organization, sometimes you feel a lot of pressure of getting the right answer. Whereas in fact, you both do a really good job of trying answers out and learning your way into better successes, knowing that you're constantly going to be learning. So your description of your role is, well, I've been in it since May, but I am still learning fast and furiously as we go forward, is something that I think you should inspire the whole world with, which is all of us should be learning into our roles because they're never static and they're constantly changing. And so even though you feel the pressure of measurement, you want to say, yes, we want to measure. Here's the story of what we're doing. Here's the objectives and business priorities you've set. And here's the metrics that we're starting to find. Don't say them as this is the answer. Say, how is this working? How could it be better? What are we learning right now?
Yeah. A quick response, because you used a word that I've been internally at least using quite a lot in terms of like incrementality. And I've been thinking about it as I'm onboarding and looking for areas of, optimization and opportunity for our team. And I like the concept and I'm aligned with incremental learning, but the mold I've been trying to break for myself is around incremental changes and like incremental optimizations. And I guess what I mean is I think oftentimes like, we walk into a really complex situation, especially as a new leader in a new organization. And it's like, well, I can make a small incremental change here and a small incremental change there. And it feels a lot more comfortable and easy. And I'm talking to myself a lot about the fact that sometimes incremental changes are not what's needed. And you need to kind of like let everything go and really have a fresh, clean whiteboard to start from. So interesting kind of like dichotomy around like when incrementality is okay, learning, and like when kind of I at least want to throw it away, which is in terms of where we find change opportunity.
Love it. Totally great pushback. What's an example of how you decide when incremental is right versus when big change is right?
Yeah. I don't know that there's a cut and dry like answer for that, but what I do, and again, I'm going through thinking around this a lot myself right now, what I do want to encourage myself to do and would encourage, leaders, and I don't just mean managers, but like leaders, people everywhere, is to at least like quarterly on the half, really take a step back to evaluate And on a day-to-day, sometimes all we can do is be reactive and make incremental changes and, optimizations. But if you give yourself the space, whether it's in an offsite, planning meeting or individually, to really be reflective, and look at what's working and what's not, and allow yourselves to really make bigger shifts to, whatever the situation organization might be.
I love it. And really, you said this earlier, but I'm going to sort of talk about the partner side, that's also a great way to lean into your partners.
Mhm.
You said you expect your partners to be aligned with measurement, but you also expect your partners to be aligned with helping you figure measurement out. The same thing when you take a step back incrementally, quarterly, or even on the half, then, if you bring an external point of view in, they can give you sort of a little bit more perspective, not only on how it's been going in our relationship, but how other relationships are working, and what we can learn from that. And I know our team is working really well with you on quarterly business reviews to sort of take a step back on the data, understand what's been working, where the resource gaps are, where you're over-resourced for what you're doing right now, and sort of flexibly realigning. I think, your point about deep operating partnership is one of the things that makes you an amazing leader, to be honest. And so the ability to reach out and trust that team and partner that way just powers things up. When you're thinking about vendors, and you don't have to think about Brainrider, but when you're thinking about where do I plug vendors into this resourcing mix or resourcing process, from resourcing strategy to execution, to even those panic moments, what are you looking for in a partner? How do you pick them so that the people listening to this podcast can sort of figure out their resourcing mix?
Great question. I think it differs. That the answer to that question changes based on leadership at the company, based on available resources we have to invest, et cetera. But at a basic level, I typically partner with procurement and have some sort of matrix of like, what are the skills we're looking at that we need to have to fill the gaps, and aligning those skills with different options. So we could select who may be a great partner for that. And I think getting at the core of what is the actual problem we're trying to solve, and bringing that, if it's an established vendor or partner, like sharing that exact problem, I think really allows for a partnership where the vendor can then come back and say, hey, you might not have thought of this, but did you know we offer X, Y, and Z? And it's like, well, no, I didn't. And that's amazing. Great. I don't think that would be possible if we were assuming what the answer to the problem is. So I guess my point is being open-minded and upfront about the specifics of the problem so that we can get potential solutions from all over the place. And I think right-sizing the need with the vendor and knowing the vendor's skill sets so that we can give them projects that they're going to be successful in and that we're going to get the optimal output from. And learning from that. Like we do, like you said, the quarterly business reviews with agency partners. I actually, just to track like we're talking about micro changes versus larger changes. I do it's kind of cheesy, but at the end of the week, I'll reflect on like what worked, what didn't. And I rarely look back at it, but sometimes at the end of a month or a quarter, I will. And it's like, if there's been a problem for 6 weeks running, like what we're doing might not be working, or 6 months or however long. And that's when you might want to say, let's get out the whiteboard and like think fresh versus, looking at something that might be changing more quickly than you think because you're in it day to day. You don't see it, but actually those small changes are making material difference.
You really have the skill set of a creative operations consultant, right? A strategist. You say it in very practical, useful terms, but you're constantly referring back to decision matrices, tools, sort of decision-making approaches that elevate the thinking and the action, and even on the reflection. I don't know a creative ops pro, I don't know a marketing pro who doesn't think about what could have gone better, but then really compiling that and turning that into monthly and quarterly reflections, right? That's leadership. That's change management and action.
And I learned that from someone else. I did not make that up myself. It was someone at the New York Times, actually. I learned through a podcast, but it's been a hugely helpful tool. So
Well, and podcasts can be hugely helpful tools as you're learning.
Yes, it can be.
It's been an amazing conversation. We're coming to the end of our half-hour time slot. Is there something that I should have asked about around your experience that you think would be helpful to people listening in as they're thinking about a year of ruthless prioritization, about alignment with objectives, about communicating up and down with transparency, and about using better decision-making frameworks to making better decisions? Is there anything else in your experience or how you're feeling right now in your roles that you would want to share with the audience?
Um, this might seem like I'll use the word squishy again, or I don't know what other word, but I do feel like we're talking a lot about change management and challenging times. And so I think I would be, bummed if I didn't mention also creating like psychological safety for teams during this period. Oftentimes when we start saying no to work or when we start saying no to partners, retaining trust with your teams, with your partners, I think it does take really strong interpersonal skills and that kind of safe space that you're creating for people where they have trust and confidence in the process and in you. That's a whole other podcast topic, probably.
What an amazing
We'll invite
topic.
a therapist in for that.
Well, and a marketing therapist, but also a creative team therapist, because they've got very different approaches. I was a kid who got along with the people who sat at the front of the class getting straight A's by actually answering the question the way the question was phrased, and the kids at the back of the class who gave an answer that was completely lateral to the question that was asked on the exam, but twice as interesting as the answer given by the kid at the front of the class. Those are very different psychological safety spaces. One of them likes order and textbook management approaches. The other one hates textbook management approaches and loves chaos. And you've both crossed psychological safety in both of those groups as you work with those teams. So I think that's a really great thing to highlight, is you have to create that. And that trust isn't just trust me, as a new car salesperson or used car salesperson would say. It's really, let me be transparent about the process and mechanics and decision-making frameworks that we're using so you can know where things are at. Love that advice. Last word.
Yeah, I would say, I was going to say positivity, which is an optimism, which sounds, again, pretty cheesy, but I do think it goes a long way, especially in uncertain times. Is like, it might not work out this month or this quarter or even this year, but like, this is the vision we have, this is the goal, and we're going to get there. And here's how we're going to get there strategically. I think like being able to share the progress we're making with the team is so crucial in that way. And what was the question? It was, what should we have asked?
So, yeah, what else would you want to share with people who are listening?
I would just say getting to know the stakeholders and their goals. What drives a product marketer is very different than what drives a copywriter. And I'm talking to those people nearly daily. And so I'm going to shift my approach, which takes a lot more effort on my end, but it gains much better results because I am understanding what they're working with and what they're trying to solve. So again, like the cross-functional relationships and communications, I think would be key to that.
Amazing. From strategic to empathetic and everything in between, the two of you really are powerhouse leaders. You're amazing to talk to. We are way over time. And so thanks for taking a little bit of extra time with us. I'm going to skip the Q&A, but if you're out there, feel free to send us questions and we'll come up with some answers. I love, and our team loves, talking about resourcing strategy, resourcing planning, resourcing execution. So if you want some help and support, then reach out to me. Both of these women would be amazing marketing leaders and creative leaders to connect with. And so reach out to them because they just have a wealth of knowledge and experience to share. And they're awesome, as are you for tuning in. So big thanks for joining us at this Brainwave experiment. How did it go? It was kind of chaos at the very start, but then settled in okay?
I missed the chaos. You hit it well. This felt great.
Good.
Very
good.
smooth.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you both. You're both
Thank
amazing.
you.
And thanks everyone out there.